Mr Cope?
Was the government right to deny Geert Wilders entry to the UK?
This is, of course, the Dutch MP who was turned back at Heathrow today. Was the government right to turn him back? Kelvin Mackenzie.
I think they probably were. In the end of the day, he came here just to cause trouble. In his own country, he was facing a charge of racial incitement and hatred. And we have enough issues among our own people not to have effectively an outsider come in and stir it up. So I, for one, am pleased. I think the government did the right thing.
And so the issue of freedom of speech doesn't arise for you?
It doesn't arise when actually he is... remember, freedom of speech, as somebody said, isn't shouting fire in a crowded theatre. You know, he was coming here not to express a view that he knew was going to be an alternative which was helpful. It was going to be wholly unhelpful, and I'm very pleased that he's not here to spread it. We have enough troublemakers in our own country without inviting others in.
Okay. Justine Greening.
I think the government probably was right to not let this man into the UK. The Dutch Prime Minister described the film that he'd come over here to show as apparently serving no other purpose other than to offend. And I do think that given he's being hopefully prosecuted by the sounds of it by his own country for inciting hatred, he's probably not the right kind of person that we want to allow in. What I would say, though, is I think the government needs to be more consistent in how it treats these sorts of people. This isn't the first kind of person who we probably don't want coming into this country to try and get in. Only last year, though, the government let in Ibrahim Moussaoui, who's a spokesman for Hezbollah. He was able to come into Britain to make speeches up and down the country. And I think many people will say, well, they probably agree with the government on what's happened today, but I can't understand why we don't take consistent action with other people who also come to this country to stir up trouble.
Of course, the Dutch Foreign Affairs Minister said the fact a Dutch parliamentarian has refused entry to another EU country is regrettable. Monty Don, do you think it's regrettable that somebody's not allowed in?
I think it is in one sense regrettable, in the sense that any kind of censorship, usually the thin end of a wedge, and where do you draw the line? Apparently, I haven't seen the film, apparently it's fairly repulsive and won't do any good, I'm sure of that. But just because we don't agree with something and we don't like it doesn't necessarily mean to say that it shouldn't exist. I don't know if he was going to break the law here. I'm not aware of that. But it was, as far as I know, it was a private viewing and it was a private invitation and it wasn't open to the public. I think, you know, in principle, it sounds hideous and I don't want to hear it. But in practice, I don't know if censorship works. I don't know if we're talking about it now, we're giving him airtime, we're giving him space. I don't know if it's just fanning the flames and having the opposite effect of what was desired.
I mean, the film... Yes.
I think this gentleman got what he wanted. This is made now politically and more public. I didn't even know him. Today it's been all over the news. So his message is already gone through now. Everybody's interested. What is it about that he wanted to promote or whatever he wanted to say? If he came in, we wouldn't have known he was coming in. So now they stop him coming in. Everybody knows about him. So, of course, now we're going to be interested to know what was in the film, what he wanted to say. So it's going to be more, whatever his message now is already gone through to everyone. Yeah. Like the fact that we are talking about it today, that means his message is gone through.
Well, the message, yes. The film may have got publicity, and I've watched the film on YouTube, or half of it, today, and it's a mixture of atrocities that were committed, the London bus bombings, 9/11, Spanish train, interspersed with quotations from the Quran. That's the structure of the film. I'm not quite sure why he was coming. It was being shown in the House of Lords, and he was invited apparently to be there to explain it or promote it. I'm not quite sure what. Selma Yaqub.
Personally, I am uncomfortable with censorship. Does Mr Wilders have the right to provoke or even be offensive? Yes, he does, under freedom of speech. And if he's being barred from the country simply because he offends people's religious sensibilities, then no matter how personally offensive or distasteful I might find his views, I wouldn't support a ban. However, society does have a right and indeed a duty to protect itself from people who incite hatred and who incite violence. And if he was deemed to be in breach of our laws in this regard, then in that context, a ban would be justifiable. I haven't seen this film, and therefore I can't comment on it directly, but I note that in Holland he's actually facing prosecution charges of incitement to hatred and of discrimination. And furthermore, I find his indignation about being banned and calling for the upholding of freedom of speech a bit hypocritical, considering he actually advocates banning the Quran. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think if he'd come, there would have been demonstrations by Muslims of the kind there were, I don't know, for the satanic verses when Salman Rushdie published? Is it offensive in that kind of way to Islam, do you think?
No, even if people find it offensive, people have the right to express their offence, as long as it's done in a peaceful way. That's what freedom of speech is about. So if it was just about offence, a person is entitled to express their views, and other people are also entitled to express their opposition to those views. That's what freedom of speech to me.
Right. Salma Yaqub is doubtful that he should have been kept out. Liam Byrne, what's your view?
I think he should have been kept out. I mean, I think, Monty's right, that we have got to stand up for free speech in this country, and that is one, I think, of our longest and our proudest traditions. But, this guy wasn't coming here to exercise his right of free speech. This guy was trying to come here in order to sow division between us in this country. And, right now we've got enough on our plate, and actually we've got a tough year ahead of us, and we're going to come through this year stronger and faster if we pull together as a country. So the idea that we let someone in who's actually going to divide us one from another, I just don't think is the right thing to do. Everything I've heard about this guy tells me he's a bigot, and the right place for him is to stay at home.
Was Ibrahim Moussawi allowed in when you were at the Home Office?
We have a kind of rule about talking about individual cases, which is important for us to uphold, because, there will be cases in the details that you don't want to get out in the public. But the key point is
Why don't you want the details to come out in the public?
Well, because, you can't provide a running commentary on people's immigration cases. But the key point is last October, the rules were strengthened to stop people who promote extremism coming into this country, and those rules are the right rules.
That was when?
That was last October.
Well, he was allowed in November.
I'm not sure if that's actually right. As I say, I'm not au fait with the details, of his case.
He called the Jews a lesion on the forehead of history. That was the offence that he was causing, but he was allowed in. There's a contradiction here, isn't there?
Well, it seems so, and I think this is why we have to be very, very careful when it comes to actually banning people. Should we express our distaste and our concern about views where they are extreme in that way, then of course we should, and we should be firm about where we stand. And that's why I think it has to be clear, are laws being breached? Okay. And if that's the case, then there's a consistency. If it's just about, well, I don't happen to like that person's viewpoints, or I might find them extreme, but somebody else may not, then we're in muddy waters. And I think we have to be very, very careful.
Do you want to revise your view, Kelvin Mackenzie, in the light of what Salma's saying?
No, not at all. I think the guy...
She, after all, represents a community that might be thought to take an offence.
I understand where she's coming from. This guy had already faced charges in his own country and was coming over here to peddle the same old hatred over here. We don't want him. Let him stay in Holland, or let him go somewhere else. Clear off.
OK. Man in the blue shirt there, you sir.
Perhaps we've already achieved the objective, which was given him the publicity, and through the internet he can get his message to the rest of the world.
Yep.
And we've really achieved that for him by banning him and giving him that publicity.
So you think it would have been better to let him in?
Yeah.
And be called less of a fuss?
Absolutely.
The woman in the third row there.
Isn't it becoming an issue of public against private space? Isn't a private invitation to explain a film in the House of Lords in a private space is a green room in the BBC? A private space is what Boris Johnson said within a Commons inquiry. private space, or is it public space? Because I understood that his less than courteous language was has been criticised as well. And it comes down to, where do you say that someone can't exercise a view if it is within a private environment?
So is the House of Lords a private environment? I don't know. The woman there on the... Is it a man? Yeah.
I watched the film on YouTube yesterday,
right.
and it definitely incites racial hatred a lot. But I think that the government's actually doubting the strength of British people. I think in Britain we really promote racial equality. I think British people should be allowed to question this man and to see the film, because I think it just shows that racism is just so stupid, the things he's saying are ridiculous, and British people should be allowed to see that, not be protected by the government. I don't think it's necessary.
Okay. Let's go. We're going to another question.